recording. All right. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. This is the fun part of my job. I love what I do, and being able to present this as far as website redesigns, doing websites. I know it can be a very tedious task to get through a website redesign, and there's a lot of information. This day and age, we're so hyper connected, hyper bombarded with information. So having guided information is extremely helpful when you're doing projects or working on anything these days. So this is what I love to do, is to be able to help. And with today's presentation is to help guide you through a winning website redesign. So the whole goal of today is to kind of give you a framework, somewhat of a checklist, more actionable um, list of things as far as what you should look for, what you should think about, what you should do when it comes down to redesigning your website, whether it's for business, in this case with TechSoup being a nonprofit incubator, helping nonprofits getting the guidelines that you need for redesigning your website. With in the nonprofit space, budget is a big thing. People are trying to make sure we allocating funds correctly, making sure, not even just funds, but resources, people, time, the most valuable asset we have is time. And just making sure we have actionable things that we can do, checklists, a framework, something that will guide us from point A to point B that'll help us accomplish the goals that we set out. So that's the whole goal of today's presentation, is to give you that information. And like I stated earlier, the presentation is recorded, so later on I'll send out a follow-up email from today's presentation that will have a link to YouTube, so you can view the recording. So if you have to jump off, I know sometimes our schedule change, so if you have to jump off, you can watch the recording. I'll also send out the presentation slides with some of my notes, as well as an accompanying ebook. The ebook will have a lot more in-depth information, but it'll be some of the same, but it's something else that you can read and share with your team, if you're wanting to take it back to your office. So let's jump right in. First, a little about myself. My name is George. I'm a WordPress Marcom website specialist. In summary, what that means is that I enjoy building websites for nonprofit, government agencies, and B2B businesses, making sure their digital presentation is online and running 24/7. So I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. I've been doing it now for over 10 years. And it seems like time is just flying by so fast, but I enjoy and love what I do. So I get a chance to do these type of presentations and present you with some of my findings and expertise. So just jump right into it. First, what makes a web design project successful? Now, successful projects are a collaboration between you and your designer, or if you have a Marcom team, but it's a successful collaboration amongst people. You need to have expert eyes of someone who has experience delivering an ideal visual solution. That's someone that can drive your goals, build a website that acts as a marketing tool and communicates with your target audience. This also includes making the website responsive so it'll adapt to your visitor's screen no matter what device that they're choosing. Also, I don't know if you are familiar or have heard, but accessibility is also a big thing as of late. With the pandemic completely transforming our lives these days, we were forced to rely on our digital tools to maintain operations across the globe. And one of the main points, or main pain points, I should say, is accessibility for those who um, might have some type of disability, to be able to use your website, even for the most simple things, finding a form, filling out a form, accessing any type of PDF documents, so many different things that they do that anyone else can do. But not having a accessible website can cause those type of problems. So you want to make sure you have an expert in the mix that can ensure that those things are in place. Um, you might already have a website that is not successful at the moment, and it happens. And what that usually comes down to is two parties who delivered what was needed to push a great project to the finish line, or actually what they desired to push to the finish line, but not actually what's needed to have a successful website. One of the things that I've encountered, myself included with my own website, is that we put a lot of our feelings into what we think should go on the website, but not actually paying attention to the data. And I'll cover that a little bit more in depth later on, but not actually paying attention to the data that tells you the story of what you should and shouldn't do for redesigning your website. But that's today's goal. You're going to walk away with 5 actionable and important steps that are crucial for a winning website project. Whether it's a team or you're working solo, you and your designer should work together to deliver on each of these 5 important steps. And in the end, you'll have successful results that you can be proud of, and more importantly, something that your audience will love. So let's jump right in. The first step: requirements. A house is a perfect analogy when it comes down to web design. I like to use that all the time. So, whenever you're building a home, you can't produce a properly built house without proper planning. And if you've ever heard of it, the 6 P's of planning apply. Proper planning prevents piss poor performance. I like using that. And a website is no different. You whenever you build a house, you'll always have a contractor. Website is no different. At the very start of a website project, you must think of the requirements that goes into the website and what you need to be successful. Your requirements can focus around specific features. For example, the ability for visitors to purchase your course, sign up for your newsletter. If you have symposiums or conferences, being able to sign up for that. Or let's say if you have someone that needs to be readily available to answer questions, you can implement a live chat option so visitors can get quick answers from you. To succeed in establishing your requirements, consider the needs of your audience over your own personal needs. That's where it comes up. These sometimes can be totally different things. Here's a helpful exercise. Describe in one sentence how your ideal website would make your audience feel, think, or act. And when you do that, you want to focus more on you, we, instead of I, me. So the camera, so to speak, should be focused more on what your audience or you focusing on them. So you're making your audience, I mean, not making your audience, you're making your website more conversational to focus on the needs or the pain points that your audience has instead of focusing on I, me, as in yourself, thinking that certain things or certain colors or designs or etc. should be on your website. So that's what that means. Think how your audience would think. How would they feel? How would they act? What would they do? Again, and I'll reiterate it later, the devil is in the data. What data are you observing that helps support any of those type of ideas that you're putting into your website? And no matter the requirements you're after, the most important thing is clarity. Clear, defined, and well thought out requirements helps everyone be on the same page. And you want to discuss your requirements with your web designer, your team, whoever, because they will help you understand what isn't and what is not possible. Sounds good. So, next is investment. Now, sometimes this is the elephant in the room. Everybody, we have a tendency, I don't know where, I've always been curious about that, but we have a tendency to shy away at discussions when it comes to monetary. So it becomes the elephant in the room, but it must be discussed, hence why it's the second most important step in this project process. It can be hard or impossible to implement what you're looking for. So that's exactly why you want to discuss the budget or investment, what we like to say. And here are some tips to help take that mindset shift from discussing finances as for a website project as a budget as opposed to investment. First, every website project needs a budget. However, you should look at it as a budget or price. It's an actual investment because at the end of it, there's a ROI. In the beginning, you do your discovery of requirements. You determine what groundwork you need to lay or groundwork you need to understand what's going on with your current website and how that translate into goals for your new website. And then once you start, getting through the project, the new website is relaunched, and now you're starting to release it out into the wild, so to speak. And as the website is starting to grow and evolve, people are using it more, it's starting to check off some of those goals. That's your return on investment. Excuse me. And you might think that sounds like marketing talk, but it's actually just a mindset shift. When you're using money to create a solution, there's an understanding that you must get a return off of that investment. And if you're looking for returns on your website, it's the same exact idea. So instead of thinking about how each element makes up the website costs, think about your project along the lines of what investment do you need to make in your website to bring success to your organization? This is the mindset shift and also helps you think smarter about how you invest in your website. By changing the way you look at the needs of your website, you open the doors to more critical thinking. Not everything you think of should go on a website. There's a lot of things that look nice, um, and it causes things to be more engaging in a sense. But if it's unnecessary, I mean, you're going to be spending time and money on something that you don't need, and it doesn't satisfy the requirements that you established at the beginning of the project. And then you start discovering, or if you do more and more of this research, you just start discovering what features or requirements are really needed in order for you to succeed. So it all ties back again to your requirements. That's why that is the most important step. Without a proper plan, it's poor performance. Then you can determine where your funds should be spent. So it goes to the age old thought of wants versus needs. We all want things to look a certain way, but do you truly need it? That's always something. Honestly, I fight with myself sometimes because I have such a being a creative, you have such a big imagination. So a lot of times you want a lot of things, but you don't truly need them. It's the same thing here. You want to get this big photo gallery that has, animations going all over the place. But if you look at the data, it shows that your website is running slow. You don't need that. You want it, but you don't need it. So if you implement something like that, that can impact the user experience, and then people will stop considering or even visiting your website altogether. So again, that's something you want to think about. Once you determine what you truly need to help you hit your goals, create a wish list. Sit down, write out what requirements will help you um, achieve the goals that you established in the beginning and how they can be implemented. And some actually can be implemented later in a second phase. A website. Which used to be a common misconception. It's not is so much now, but websites used to be understood as a set it and forget it thing. You go through the redesign, build the website, launch it out into the wild, and just let it do its thing. Well, websites are not that. They're an ever evolving thing because I'm pretty sure you realize how fast technology is moving these days. So, websites are a ever evolving piece of technology. And not to mention from a technological standpoint, but also a user experience standpoint. What people are using or engaging with today might not be the same tomorrow. For example, years ago, I'll say in the beginning of my career, about 12 years ago, um, content from a standpoint of reading content was a lot more prevalent. People needed the information. They want to read, they want to understand, they want to know what you got going on, what services, products, or whatever you're providing. Data tells us that that's not the case anymore. People are more visual in nature. So having not Hey, everybody. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. All right. Yes, you're absolutely right. The storm here is it's getting not crazy. It's starting to come in and out. So I appreciate you sticking by. Let's get back on track here. All righty. Can you see my screen? Perfect. Cool. All right. So where I was talking about the investment when it comes down to the second phase of work. It's okay to create a list of things that can be done on your website, but pushed off until a second iteration of your website. So always think about that. You know, what goals you need to accomplish now with redesigning your website so we can get it live and start iterating from there, and determine what success means to you, whether it's doubling your newsletter signups in a year, 100 new event registration in 6 months, more engagement on your um, document library, whatever that means, whatever success means to you, that will help determine what type of investment. And not only just from a money standpoint, which is what this is talking about, but also you want to think about a time standpoint. Time is the most valuable resource that we have. And with this tip, it leads up to the next step, which is goals. It's always important to have goals for your new website. Measuring the success of rebuilding your website is the ROI. Do you see how everything is building up? First you have to lay the groundwork for your requirements. Second, you determine what investment that you can put into your website that will make it successful. And then you have to set goals for the website project itself. Typically, it would be that the website is delivered on time, for an agreed level of investment and with all of the requirements in place. It's always good to have scheduled clear goals that allows for easy communication during a website project. Both you and your designer will be aware of any of the goals for the new website, as these will be discussed at the beginning of the project. It's always great to outline these as clear as possible. We are so busy with so much, so writing these down on paper, tangible goals that you have for your website is the best way to start. And the best way to help you with that is a very popular acronym. I'm sure you've probably seen this before, but it never goes without mentioning, is SMART goals. Goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So here's an example of a SMART goal: increase donations by 15% in the next 6 months. Specific: increase donations by 15%. Very specific goal. Measurable: gather data on the current donation levels and track new donations after the new site is live. Achievable: let's say if you're getting $50,000 increase and a 50, I mean, let's say you're getting donations at a level of $50,000 and you increase 15%. That's an extra $7,500 or an extra $1,250 per month for 6 months. How achievable is that if you're receiving over $4,000 per month currently? It's very achievable. Relevant. Is it relevant to the growth? It's relevant to the growth of your organization. It helps fund the operations that you have. It helps you provide more services, um, and products, or be able to put on more um, programs, events. Those donations is very relevant to your organization as a nonprofit. And time bound, you want to hit it in 6 months. So that's it. Breaking down a goal, making it into a SMART goal. It will ensure that you're not making hunches or you're not making any guesses, but you have a clear, defined plan with moving forward. All right. So the next step is content. Now, in my experience, this is one of the biggest challenges for a website project, but it's also one of the most important features. Now, your content has the power to draw people into your site, and it also has the power to repel them away from your site. Whenever possible, I do advise working with a skilled copywriter to ensure that you have great copy for your website. Now, it can depend a little on your available investment, but investing in a great copywriter will pay for itself many times over. I mean, even if you have someone on your team who has experience in copywriting, copy editing, they might have an English degree. That's even great. They can be able to formulate your copy in a way that will speak to your target audience. And I know it's very tempting to write the copy yourself. Now, again, if unless you have someone on your team has experience with doing it, getting the tone of your copy can be hard. The reason being is because, and again, I'm 100% guilty of doing this. This is the reason why I always commission copywriters, is because whenever you're trying to write your content, yourself, I should say, you have a tendency to want to make yourself, just plainly put, you want to make yourself sound smart. That's your whole goal. You want people to read your content to know that, hey, they know what they're talking about, they know what they're doing, they have experience, et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, like I said earlier, with the UI situation, you end up speaking over your audience's head. And when that happens, repelling your audience. And that's unfortunate because you want to allow them to stay on the site to learn more about your organization. The best option, again, is to work alongside your copywriter, send them. It seems like the storms don't want to let me be great, but we're going to keep pushing on though. All right. So again, going back, you want to work alongside your copywriter to let them know, who your audience is, who your organization is, letting them know, exactly what you're trying to speak to your audience. And then with their skills, they're able to translate that into great copy that will start it to draw in the audience that you want to do, or draw in your audience to what you're working on. A great copywriter is skilled at turning features into benefits. You want to talk about the benefits of the services that you're providing, or the information or research that you're providing, and a skilled copywriter can do that. And again, one of the biggest struggles that I have had, and this is something I see a lot of, is writing your website copy with jargon. You don't want to do that. And again, this is why a copywriter is essential, is because speaking with the jargon can sometimes confuse your audience, because they're coming to you from a place, somewhat, they're coming to you from a place of being unknown or unaware of what you provide. So if you're speaking in jargon, it can lose them, as opposed to speaking to the pain points that they have. You're relating your copy a lot more to what they're looking for, and then through the journey of them reading the content on your website, then they will start discovering a lot more about the product, services, or any events or anything that you have going on that's will be beneficial to them. So again, having a skilled copywriter to do this will help you increase your chances of gaining the know, like, trust factor of your audience. And the best type of copy is always conversational and very direct. It sets the tone of your organization by making it sound easy to do business with you. So I hope all that makes sense. But having the copy, having the content, making sure that it's conversational, make sure it's direct, and making sure it speaks to your audience is the best way to achieve that. And it also adds on to the next and last point, which is communication. And communication is just a simple conversation between you and your web designer that can help you save a ton in the long run. Ongoing effective communication will help you get the most out of your website project. It's always a two-way street. Um, and it's a TLC type of relationship. And this time, TLC stands for time, love, and communication. Effective communication keeps a website project on track. It helps you avoid any type of delays. The proposal your website designer sends you should have a section about the project's time frame, and it should outline what the communication is for the project. The schedule is drawn out with the typical expectation that both parties will be able to communicate on a timely basis, even if there are some delays, which happens. And that just a nature of the beast. Sometimes delays happen. Things come up, changes in your organization that go on, something that's not atypical. But it happens. Effective communication will help you pivot in these times when the unknown happens. So it's always great to have that open line of communication with your developer or designer. And one of the best things you can do for your project is to ensure there's one, let me emphasize that, 1 to 2 max clear point or clear points of communication with people in your organization. Often this will be yourself and maybe one of your teammates, but usually it's a solo person on your team and your web designer. Being Having that one person to communicate between you and the designer for a project will help immensely cut down on over communicating during a project. Um, if it's just yourself, that's great. But if you're on a larger team of employees, then you need to delegate this to an appropriate member on your staff. The problem you run into is having too many chefs in the kitchen, and it can cause just a lot of confusion. I've experienced this a few times in the beginning, but it's a great boundary to set. And it also helps maintain some sanity if you think about it. When you have, just think about the age old time of being in grade school when you have too many kids talking at once trying to answer a question. It's the same exact process. You have multiple people providing feedback at the same exact time can cause too much confusion, because then there's not a clear, definite plan of attack of what should be changed. You have just multiple ideas coming at once. So if you have that one person delegated on your team, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box for me. We can. Okay. I presume no one has any questions? Oh, Camille. Okay. I'm waiting. I wish the chat had one of those like typing bubbles to show that someone's typing. It would be great. An example for communication. You have too many chefs. So one of the an example of that. Well, let me ask this. Elaborate on an example about communication.
Can I talk on the
Yeah,
microphone?
sure. I was just about
Oh,
to say that if it's easier for you to get on
oh
the
my goodness, thank you.
yeah,
Okay, so redesign. Everybody has their what they want the redesign to be.
right,
And I have an organization that because everyone's a volunteer, everyone thinks that they should have their say in what happens. And so you so the redesign has to be there's like 15 different um or more actually of pages that um each division has.
okay,
So they have to be each manager of each division will have to have a say in what happens on that page because it's their information.
right,
So you have a website designer. I don't want the website designer to be talking to 15 different people because it's going to be a mess.
right.
So how do you think that that one or two points of contact could actually go through? I mean, would the web designer give a like a sheet, a question and answer sheet, like a form to fill out? What do you want it to look like?
Yeah, so I'll explain that. So first of all, starting with point number one, you have your requirements. You know, what exactly is working and not working with your current website? Establish that from the beginning. And then what your goals are from a Marcom standpoint, how the website can fit in that. That will allow you to create the requirements, thus something you can give to the 15 leads of the department to say, hey, here's the goals that we're trying to accomplish and the requirements that we're looking for the website. How can your particular department section of the website fit into this particular list of requirements and goals for the website? And then once you have established that in a list, clear, concise manner, then that's something you provide to your web designer. Now, from our end of the spectrum, we do have questions with any website project. In the requirements section, for example, with projects I work on, you always have a discovery and kickoff session. Now, when the RFP before it comes out, if you release it or if you're, going out and reaching out to different developers, you always send out like a list of this is what we're looking for, this is the budget, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, When the actual project then commences, your designer or developer will actually sit down with you and ask questions that will help them to elaborate on the goals and requirements that you have established for your organization. So I'll give you an example. And this is kind of a relevant example. So Allison, she's in the chat. I'm actually working with her on a current website redesign for them for her organization, and they released a RFP that had a list of what they're looking for, what goals they're trying to accomplish, etc. And now we're moving on to the phase of the discovery and design portion. So what we would do, we're meeting together to have a conversation. There are questions based on my experience that will help me to facilitate the accomplishment of their goals and requirements they have for their new website. And then once we finish that discovery session, that will allow us to create an actionable plan to say, hey, based off your goals and your requirements for your new website that you establish with your organization, this is the plan that we can implement to help achieve those goals. And then once we start getting through the entire process of the project, then that will check it off and allow us to see, the result of that. So yes, you want to go to them as in your, department leads to say, "Hey, these are the goals we're trying to accomplish for marketing and communications. Um, this is how the website can fit in the scope of that. These are the requirements, or at least an idea, because sometimes you might not have an entire idea behind what exactly is required for the website, but at least you might have some inkling of an idea. But this is what we're working with, and how your specific section or department of the website can fit into this. Make sure you're following this list here. That'll prevent too many chefs in the kitchen and all of that, unnecessary feedback of, should we add this? We want to do that. We want to da 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 da. That will establish like, hey, we're not making this a train wreck, just being honest. And we want to stay on track of what we're trying to accomplish for our organization. Does that help?
Yes, and then I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Alright, so when the redesign is done, is there or should there be some sort of another discovery session where everybody looks at it, plays around with it, and gives feedback for tweaking?
Yes. So and just speaking to my own process. So there's 4 phases to a project for me: discovery, design, and content review. Excuse me, discovery, design, and content review, development, and launch. So during the discovery is your first kickoff. That's where you establish the requirements. And then the second, the design and content review, is another where you review, what content copy that goes onto the website. And then the design portion of it, it takes the content copy and requirements that were established and implement it into more of a visual mock-up of what the website is supposed to look like once it goes live. And during that time, that's when you have feedback. Depending on how the feedback goes, sometimes I like to keep things more, easy to do. So I don't require to have a meeting unless there's a need to get on the phone or Zoom and have a conversation if there's something a little more complicated or in depth I need to explain, or questions I want to answer from my client. But there's a point of communication there. For the development, once you've built out the MVP, which is the minimal viable product, then there's a what's called user testing process. So you send the website over to the client, or you can jump on a live call and click through, say, based off of the requirements that were established in the beginning. All right, you want to make it easier for people to sign up for your newsletter. Okay, and show them visually how that happens, or if they have the website for themselves, they can review it. And then that's where more feedback is provided to iterate into a more usable way. Because I mean, it happens again. Some things happen. Sometimes something gets missed, or what you thought in the beginning may operate the way you planned it, may not play out that way. So during the user testing, you are able to catch that. So when it's time to go live, there's not a bug or a problem there. And then even after the site is launched, for myself, I'm always there at least a year to hang around for any issues that are coming up. doing quarterly strategy sessions. This is what's worked, this is what's not working. Let's review your SEO analytics and all of the data that's going on with the website to help optimize and test to get to where the website is succeeding, you know more and more, and then making those necessary changes during that time of support. So yes, you're always constantly testing. That's why I mentioned earlier that website is not a set it and forget it thing. You're always communicating and always iterating on the research that you have done about your website. That makes sense. Okay.
Thank you so
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, Audrey, an example of a great one sentence requirement statement. I think I know what you're talking about, but could you if you want to jump on the mic too, Audrey, you can. But could you elaborate on that for me, please?
It was just when you were talking about the first step, the requirements, you said, describe in one sentence what you want your website audience, to feel or act. And I was just wondering if you had an example of one that you were like, this is a really good requirement statement.
Um, let's see. Oh, well, a requirement statement could be like what I mentioned earlier about the newsletter. You would like a requirement for your website to be integrated with your CRM or newsletter provider, MailChimp, Constant Contact, etc., to be able to increase newsletter signups. That's simple as it gets. I and from my own standpoint, sometimes I will end up getting too elaborate about some of the requirements, but getting very specific um, about what you need will establish your requirements. So that's one. Creating an integration to your or integrating your website with your CRM or newsletter platform to increase user subscribers. That's it. No problem. No problem.
may I ask another question?
Sure, Camille.
When you make those requirements, do all the requirements have to have some sort of quantifiable, um, do they have to in order to know that they are going to happen, do they have to have a quantifiable um, requirement to the requirement?
I like how you put that. You want to make it measurable as possible. So if because you don't want to establish well, there is a way of doing that, but it still needs to be measurable. You want to make sure that whatever requirement that you're setting, which ties into your SMART goals, is measurable. In the case of the newsletter, you know, that one could be one without measure, so to speak. So there's not any quantifiable, date, like number behind it, like 20% increase in subscribers. But your website may have a problem with connecting to, well, I'll just say MailChimp for the sake of conversation. It might have a problem connecting to MailChimp. So you want to fix that so you can then increase or allow your audience to subscribe to your newsletter. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, but again, it ends up being measurable because if you start off before the redesign with 100 subscribers, eventually more people are visiting your website because it's updated, and then that will compel them to subscribe to your newsletter, and then you will see actionable, measurable data showing that you're getting more and more users. So it doesn't specifically have to be, but it needs to be to ensure that you're seeing the needle move, because then you're just going off a hunch. But some stuff, there's a very, very few that comes from a technical standpoint that can be set as a requirement. I'm trying to think of one. Um, Software updating. That's one. A lot of my personal usage is WordPress. I'm very skilled in it. I've worked in an enterprise level with multi-billion dollar conglomerates on WordPress sites. So, um, software updating is not necessarily a measurable requirement, but you want to make sure that your software is up to date because there's security patches that go in. Performance is another thing because coding languages update frequently. So updating, that's your software is ensuring that your website stays online. I mean, it stays functional. It's not, breaking down at 3 in the morning. I've actually had that happen before on the site, but it's not breaking down at 3 in the morning. When I was an intern, we had a site crash at it was like 2:30 in the morning. It was I was working on an internship for an agency that was doing a website for a travel agency, and the lady had international clients, and the site crashed at 2:30 in the morning, and I spent 2 hours getting it back online. That was a very interesting time in my life, long, long time ago. But things like that. But most requirements do have some type of quantifiable data to it, but it might not be explicitly stated or might not be of utmost importance. Making sure software is updated versus ensuring you're getting a certain level of donations. Both of them can be quantifiable, but the donations will be more important. So just kind of establishing which ones are more important to you. Hope that answered that for you. No problem. I think we got time for maybe one or two more questions. Again, you're welcome to jump on the mic if you have another one. Thank you, Audrey. I appreciate it. All right, I think that's it. I appreciate you for attending. Thanks for coming out and sticking with me. I know we're having a little bit of technical issue, but I always like persevering through the tough times. So I appreciate you for sticking by. Thank you for the questions. Great stuff as always. If you want to chat or have any other questions for me, there's a link right there to my website, L squared. That's ELSQRD.com/contact us. You can go on there and schedule some time with me, and we can sit down and chat if you have any other more in-depth questions, or if you have a current project come up you want to talk about it a little more in detail. I'm definitely open with doing that. So thank you, Camille. I appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I appreciate everyone else, and I hope you enjoyed it and got your information. Stay tuned to your emails, because you'll be getting follow-up emails from me with some more in-depth information. Again, you'll get the presentation slides, a recording of today's presentation, and some more supplemental information. So again, I thank you, thank you, thank you. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you have a more productive week, and take care.